A beautiful spring evening, a quiet village on the coast of Portugal, a sleeping child just days away from her 4th birthday. And then she was gone. On May the 3rd, 2007, Madeleine McCann vanished from her holiday apartment without a sound, while her parents dined just meters away. No forced entry, no witnesses, no cries for help. What followed was a global media storm, a web of suspects, conflicting theories, and one of the most extensive missing person cases of all time.
We chase the trail where the truth might fall, one step closer to the dark. We're seeking answers, digging through the dust. Every secret's a ghost we can trust. Seeking answers where the silence rusts. The truth's a knife with a blood.
Kate Marie McCann and Jerry Patrick McCann were both born in 1968, the former in Huyton near Liverpool, while the latter was born in Glasgow. Both raised as Roman Catholics, Jerry attended Holyrood RC Secondary School before graduating from the University of Glasgow with a BSc in Physiology, becoming qualified in medicine in 1992. He would also go on to obtain his MD and would become a consultant cardiologist at Glenfield Hospital in Leicester. Kate, on the other hand, attended All Saints School in Anfield before graduating from the University of Dundee in 1992, also with a degree in medicine, moving on in her later career to obstetrics, gynecology, anaesthetic and general practice. It was in 1993 when Kate and Jerry first met each other in Glasgow before marrying 5 years later.
When we were both newly qualified doctors, we both went for the same job, and I was sitting waiting to go in to be interviewed, and I saw this beautiful, young, long girl with long blonde hair. I thought, wow, she's beautiful. And we didn't actually speak, but neither of us got that job. 6 months later, Kate moved to Glasgow, and we ended up working in the same hospital.
And you describe yourself as much shyer to Jerry. You say that you were the shy half of the partnership, and Jerry is a bit more of the outgoing character.
Definitely. I mean, I'm an only child, so our house was quite quiet, whereas Jerry's the baby of 5 kids and quite a loud family.
On May the 12th, 2003, their first child, Madeleine, was born in Leicester, followed by twins, a boy and a girl, 2 years later, with the family residing in Rothley, Leicestershire.
I don't think it's a secret to any of my family or friends really that I always wanted to be a mum, and even in school and stuff I talk about, I was going to have 5 kids, and that was like a cert. And in my medical school yearbook, at the end it just says prognosis, mathematician and mother of 6.
Yeah.
So I was very definite about that.
The first 5 months was a real shock. I mean, she was absolutely beautiful and we loved her to bits, but she had the most horrible colic, and we tried everything, and she said we won't use a dummy. It was just everything we tried, and nothing really seemed to work. And I think for Kate and I, that period, although it was lots of happiness and joy, we were working a full shift system, passing her, and I was still working. And if I get home any later than 6 o'clock, there was trouble because Kate was standing there. I need the toilet.
Yeah. She was in a lot of pain. I mean, anyone who's had a baby who's had colic,
they can't articulate it because they're babies.
Yeah, but like a little fist would be clenched and a face would be purple, and you just feel really helpless because it's really hard to ease that pain. But she got through that at about 5 months, and I mean, she was just awake constantly, Madeleine. Do you know what I mean? She's just so alert, taking it all in, and I sometimes think that was maybe why she always seemed a little bit ahead of the game, because she was just absorbing everything,
But 2 years later, just days shy of Madeleine's 4th birthday, and this family would become known throughout the entire world. On April the 28th, 2007, the McCann family arrived in Portugal in the Algarve region for a 7-night holiday.
It was on New Year's Day, 2007, and our very good friends Fiona and Dave came round with their children, and they mentioned that they were going to be going with other friends of theirs who we know as well. And they said, "Do you fancy it?" And Jerry got the laptop out and was looking at the resort and everything. And
Kate and I hadn't been to Mark Warner holiday before, but Dave and Fiona had, and it looked great, and we're quite sporty, and we thought, and it was hard work with the kids, don't get me wrong, we love them and everything, but
Yes.
you felt, well, at least the kids would get a holiday, we'd get to spend time and get to do a little bit of things together as
Yes.
well, and we have always tried to do that, is to keep time for ourselves.
Yes.
At some point. So to me it looked great. Kate was a bit more hesitant just about the packing, with going with 3 kids, toddlers essentially, and the hassle playing. And
I just didn't know. We'd had some really good breaks in Centre Parks, and we'd all loved it. And to me, it just seemed, going on a plane with all your baggage and
It's an ordeal.
yeah. I mean, that was all. But I was the one that finally had to be convinced to go, really, and I got, everyone else was very enthusiastic.
They were staying in the small village of Praia da Luz, which only had a population of around 1,000 at the time. They were staying in apartment 5A at Rua Dr. Agostinho da Silva, a 2-bedroom grounded floor apartment in the 5th block of a group of apartments which was known as Waterside Village. However, it wasn't just the 5 of them. The McCanns were holidaying with 7 friends, who would later be known as the Tapas 7, who also had their own children. In total, there were 9 adults and 8 children.
Basically, that was the only night when we weren't back in the apartment for 11 o'clock, and we'd gone into the cover. It was really cold, actually. Every night, I had 5 layers on, actually sitting in the tapas area.
Sure.
But we went in for a drink in the little covered area. So it was actually 10 to 12 when we left that night. And Jerry was tired, basically, and he just said, right, I'm off, bye.
I like getting to bed early,
Yeah,
which is
okay.
late for us.
Yeah.
What you see is what you get with Jerry, do you know what I mean? He's kind of,
so he's
not
skedaddled.
touchy-feely. Yeah, he said, I'm off.
Yeah.
And Dave just said to me something like, oh, that's right. He just joked, and he said, oh, she's not that bad, Jerry, and anyway, I was a bit upset, I think, because he'd just gone off and I was still standing there, and I don't know why it bothered me particularly, because I'm not usually that touchy. But anyway, I went back, literally 5 minutes later, I went back to the apartment, by which point Jerry's snoring. And at that point, I just thought, he's snoring, my 3 lovely kids are in that room, and there's a spare bed, I'm sleeping in there.
With the kids.
And, I wouldn't have even mentioned this in my book, because it is so unusual.
Sure.
And, I think we're very lucky. We do have a really good relationship. We don't row, and I know that is quite unusual. We don't,
Oh, that's good, yeah.
And other than when, one of us has been on call or something, we don't sleep in separate rooms. So
I
it was
understand.
really unprecedented. But because obviously after Madeleine was taken, every detail was significant. That's
course.
why I brought it up. So I did actually, on the Wednesday night, I did actually spend the night in the room with the children.
And why is that significant, do you think?
Well, I don't know if it is, to be honest, Ryan. It's
Yeah.
just I felt I had to share absolutely everything.
Next door to the McCanns were Matthew and Rachel Oldfield in 5B, with Jane Tanner and Russell O'Brien in 5D, while David and Fiona Payne as well as Diane Webster were all on the first floor. But nothing could prepare them or the rest of the world for what was about to happen.
Oh, she was absolutely great fun.
Was she?
Bags of personality. She's a little mimic.
Really?
And yeah, she could do accents and things, and she'd love doing role playing and full of energy, like round the garden. It would be chase me, and another thing, my quality time with her was watching sort of Doctor Who, and once the twins went to bed, or Robin Hood, but she was
Yeah,
great.
she loved all that. You think at that age, it'd be too scary, but she loved Doctor Who.
She was getting really
Robin
into
Hood,
music, wasn't
Superman.
she? You were going to have a little disco for her.
Well, yeah, when it's for a 4th birthday, obviously, which we didn't have, but her best friend actually was born on the same day, just by chance. So they were going to have a joint party together, and it was going to be their first disco.
Yeah.
May the 3rd, 2007. The McCann children spent the morning in the Ocean Club Resorts Kids Club before lunching at their apartment and then heading out to the pool. It was at 2:29 p.m. when the last known photograph of Madeleine McCann was taken, sitting next to Jerry and her sister. The children then returned to the kids club at 6 p.m. before Kate returned them to the apartment while Jerry headed to a tennis lesson. It was at 7 p.m. when the children were put to bed.
Well, the first night we went to a restaurant called the Millennium Restaurant,
Yes.
but it was over half a mile away, which when you've got 3 little kids and you don't have a buggy, it actually turns out to be a really long walk. Sorry, especially at that time of night when they're all a bit weary, because it was open quite late. So from the next night, we went to the Tapas restaurant, which was close to the apartment. The problem with that one was you had to book on that morning, so there was no certainty if you'd be able to, you know, to get a table or not.
Yeah, we kind of fell into the routine, and it was nearby, it was adjacent to our apartment, and the decision sort of processes for us where we kept the kids in the routine, so it was after their tea, bath, jammies on, milk, story in bed, and they were asleep between 7 and 7:30 every night. And rather than saying we'll put the kids in the creche and disturb them and bring them back, we said we'll just eat in the tapas area and we'll come back and check them. And other Mark Warner resorts do baby listening, and collectively we decided that that's what we do, really just to check the kids weren't crying.
8:30. The parents then leave their apartment for dinner at the club's open-air tapas restaurant on the far side of the pool. The 9 adults were working on a rotating system so that they could all check on their own children on a half-hourly basis. But unfortunately, this wouldn't be enough.
On the first day, Madeleine was really tired, and I remember by the time the children used to go from the kids' club to a little area next to the tapas area for like high tea. And I'd actually been for a run, and I met them back there. Jerry was already there, and she was absolutely shattered. Yeah. She was really tired, and I said to her, "You all right?" And then she said to me, "Will you carry me, Mummy?" And that was unusual, you know, but we put that down to, you know, we're getting towards the end of a holiday. Yeah. They'd done loads of activities, and I just thought she was really tired. So I carried Madeleine back with the other children. We went back, we decided we'd get them bathed and ready for bed because they were so tired, as opposed to going to the play area, which we usually did. Jerry was playing, they had like a men's tennis night between 6 and 7, so Jerry went for that, and I just sat down on the couch with the 3 kids and had some treats and biscuits and crisps and stuff, and she sat on my lap and just cuddled in, and she often liked to put my engagement ring on. So she had that on her finger, and then we read a story, and it was, you know, it was lovely. You know,
what story did you read, Kate?
Well, we had 2. One when we were sitting there was a Judith Kerr book called Mog, which is one of Madeleine's favourites.
Cat.
Yeah.
Yes.
And we've got lots of Mog books.
Yeah.
And then when we went through to the bedroom and we were all sitting on Madeleine's bed, we had If You're Happy and You Know It.
So you were all getting involved in that as any normal family.
The thing about it was Madeleine was having such a brilliant holiday, and she was the oldest of all the kids and little ringleader, and having so much fun. And I remember the photograph that afternoon when I was sitting by the paddling pool with her, and she was just having a ball.
Oh, hang on. I think we're on video. We're still on video, don't worry. We can get everyone in. Cheer up, Jerry, we're on holiday.
The first check was done by Jerry at 9:05, and all 3 children were still safely asleep. Although he distinctly remembered leaving their bedroom door slightly ajar, whereas now it was almost completely wide open. However, he thought nothing of it, pulled the door nearly closed again before returning to the restaurant. It was around the same time when Jane Tanner had also left to check on her own daughter and passed Jerry on her way. She remembered Jerry stopping to talk to another British holiday goer before, at around 9:15, spotting a man carrying a child across the junction of Rua Dr. Francisco Gentil Martins and Rua Dr. Agostinho da Silva, just ahead. This wasn't far from Madeleine's room and was heading east, away from apartment 5A. The child was wearing light-coloured pink pyjamas with a floral pattern and cuffs on the legs, later being described as similar to the ones worn by Madeleine, but Tanner thought nothing of it at the time and didn't alert any of the others. Not long after, at 9:30, Kate intended to check on her children, but it was Matthew Oldfield who offered to do it while he was checking on his own next door. During this time, he noticed that the kid's bedroom door was now wide open again, but he heard no noise and didn't look into the room to confirm that the children were there, before leaving the apartment. It was 10 PM when Kate conducted her own check, entering the apartment through the patio doors at the back, when she noticed that the bedroom door was wide open again.
It was during one of my checks that I discovered she'd gone, and I can't really go into any details about that, but I'm sure any parent will realise how that felt.
The panic set in immediately?
Yeah, pretty much. I went in through the patio doors and I just stood in this sitting area and it was all quiet. And then I just looked over towards the bedroom door, and it was open much further than we'd left it, because we usually just have it quite closed over, but so enough light gets in. And at that point I thought, has Matt left it open when he's checked on them? So I thought, well, I'll pull the door back over again. And just as I was pulling it to, it just slammed. So like a draft had caught it. So I turned behind me and checked that it wasn't the patio doors, that I hadn't left them open, which I hadn't. So then I went back to open the door again, just so it was open a little bit. And as I opened it, that's when I looked into the room, and it was really dark, but I couldn't quite make Madeleine out. And I was looking at the pillow and thinking, is that a head, is it not? And then I realised, actually, oh, she's not there. And I thought, I wonder if she's gone through to our bedroom, and that would explain why the door was open a bit more. So I went through to our bedroom, and she wasn't there. And that is the first point, really, when the panic just hit. And I went straight back into their bedroom, and just as I did that, there was another gust of wind, and the curtains, which were drawn, just kind of flew out and flew open. And then I saw that the shutters were all the way up and the window was pushed right across, and I just knew.
Madeleine's blanket and cuddle cat toy was still on the bed, but Madeleine McCann was nowhere to be seen. After frantically checking the apartment, Kate rushed back to the restaurant, hysterically screaming, "Madeleine's gone, someone's taken her." It was 10 when Jerry sent Oldfield to the reception to call the police. Before at 10:30 the resort activated their missing child search protocol.
I ran to the window, and I have no idea what I thought I was going to find, but ran to the window, and then I just whizzed around the house flat for 10-15 seconds. And again, I knew she'd been taken, but I just thought, just in case she's, I don't know, cowering in a cupboard or something. And then I just flew out the back of the apartment and ran to the table, and I was just screaming, "Madeleine's gone, someone's taken her."
It was just disbelief when I saw Kate, and I was shouting, "She can't be gone, she can't be gone," and Kate was distraught and saying, "She's gone, someone's taken her." And
60 staff members and guests searched the premises and the surrounding areas until the early hours, but they found nothing. Madeleine was blonde with blue-green eyes and had a small brown spot on her left calf, with a distinctive dark strip on the iris of her right eye. She was wearing short-sleeved pink and white Marks & Spencer's Eeyore pajamas. Officers didn't arrive until 11 from Lagos, 5 miles away. By midnight they alerted the criminal police, known as the Policia Judiciaria, or PJ, who wouldn't arrive until 1 a.m, though they claimed that they had arrived within 10 minutes of being alerted. By 2 a.m, 2 patrol dogs were brought in to help the search efforts, followed by, at 8 o'clock, 4 search and rescue canines as well. Officers were searching waterways, wells, caves, sewers and ruins in the area. But there were huge mistakes made in the first initial, extremely vital, precious hours at the start of the investigation, which may have damaged the case. Investigators didn't conduct house-to-house searches, the border and marine police weren't given descriptions of Madeleine for hours, roadblocks weren't put in place until 10 a.m. the following morning, increasing the possibility of her being taken to any of the adjacent countries with ease, nor did officers request motorway surveillance pictures of any of the vehicles leaving Praia da Luz that night or on the roads to the Spanish border. Euroscut, the company monitoring the road, admitted that they were never approached for information on the case either. It took Interpol 5 days to issue a global missing person alert, and to make matters worse, not everyone at the resort was even interviewed about the disappearance. Furthermore, the crime scene wasn't secured. Although Portuguese police took samples from Madeleine's bedroom, which was sent to Portuguese labs and the UK FSS, finding some unknown inconclusive DNA, it meant nothing, as over 20 people had trampled into the crime scene in a desperate attempt to try to find Madeleine, destroying any potential evidence. According to Kate McCann, the police had placed tape across the doorway to the bedroom, but they left at 3 a.m. without securing it. The apartment was left empty for a month after the disappearance, but it was then let out to tourists and wasn't sealed off again until August for further analysis. Crowds had gathered by the front door as well as by the bedroom window of the children's room, destroying vital evidence. There was also conflict, as this was a Portuguese investigation, though the Leicestershire police did attempt to assist them. The issue was the PJ operate under a judicial magistrate system, differing from the British police, so they would have to wait for the court to make any decision, which slowed down the investigation further.
We know obviously there's been a lot of criticism of the Portuguese police, and obviously I've talked about it in my book. But you know, we got over the first 24, 48 hours when opportunities were missed, like forensics, for example, and roadblocks and blah, blah, blah. And then after that, we did actually feel that we were getting as good a search as we could get in Portugal with the systems that were in place.
Yes.
And we did have, obviously, assistance from the British police. And we did actually feel that we were developing a relationship with the police, which was unusual because of the judicial secrecy laws. So we did actually get to meet every sort of 10 days to 2 weeks, which is a lot, to be honest. When your child's missing, that's a really long time to wait for a snippet of information, but it was better than nothing.
Investigators searched through images that had been found in other paedophile investigations, and the McCanns were shown photographs of known sex offenders in the area in case they recognised any from the resort, to no avail.
Looking back, I mean, did you see anything suspicious in the days leading up to her abduction? Did you notice anything? Have you been racking your brains to try to think whether people might have been watching?
We didn't.
If we did, we wouldn't tell you because it may be important information, but we didn't, you know. It was such a relaxing holiday, and in fact, as a family unit, up until that night, and with the friends we were here, certainly for us, it was as good a holiday as we have had with the children, up until that point. I think everyone knows the terror you have when you lose a child in a supermarket or something, even for seconds or a minute. Well, that was developing, and then when I did that, the pit in my stomach, and I just felt, you know, and terror, just absolute terror. And we started searching right away, so the boys split up, and me and Dave went one way, Matt and Russell went round the immediate blocks and shouting her name, and when we didn't find her, I asked Matt to go down to 24-hour reception and call the police. We didn't even know the emergency number, we didn't speak Portuguese, and then after half an hour, the police still hadn't turned up, and we were frantic, absolutely frantic, and asked Matt to go back again, and that's the first time at 22:40, even though it was just after 10 we raised the alert, that was the first time the police logged the call, and then it was another 20 minutes till they came, and then all the language barriers and everything, and then they called the judicial police at midnight, and it was about another hour before they arrived. In the meantime, Mark Warner had organised a search around the vicinity, but every second felt like a minute, and every minute was like an hour in the night.
All these opportunities lost through, as you say, translation, and then just pure
I think by
inability.
the time the criminal police arrived, it was almost 4 hours since Madeleine had been taken.
This case has captivated the entire world for 19 years, and it has led to a barrage of theories and potential suspects. The first of which was the initial belief that Madeleine McCann had simply woken up in the night and left the apartment on her own accord looking for her parents, and she was either then abducted on the street or fell into one of the many open construction sites nearby. The apartment contained some sliding glass patio doors in the living room at the back, which overlooked the club's pool, tennis court, restaurant and bar. These doors could be accessed by the public street, which also contained a small gate and some steps, while the front door was on the opposite side of the block from the club. This door was locked and was situated directly next to the children's bedroom, though their room contained a waist-high window with curtains and a metal exterior shutter which could only be controlled by a cord inside the apartment. This window overlooked a narrow walkway and the local car park, which was only separated from the street by a low wall. Madeleine's bed was next to the bedroom door on the other side of the room to the window, while the twins slept in travel cots in the centre of the room, while another unoccupied single bed was beneath the window. The distance from the apartment and the Tapas restaurant was around 180 feet, but as the route would actually involve walking along a public street to reach the doors of the resort, followed by walking through the resort to the other side of the pool, it was actually around 269 feet. While the top of the apartment was visible from the restaurant, the doors weren't. The patio doors could only be locked from the inside, so the parents had left these unlocked for their half-hourly checks with the curtains drawn. There was also a child safety gate at the top of the stairs from the patio with a low gate at the bottom, which led to the street. The parents were convinced that they had been watched by a predator during their holiday. On the morning of her disappearance during breakfast, Madeleine asked her mother, "Why didn't you come when my brother and I cried last night?" This led them to believe that someone may have entered their room the previous night as well.
The next morning she said, Mummy, I can't remember if it was Mummy or Daddy, why didn't you come when Shawnee and I were crying last night? And we both looked at each other and thought, that's odd. crying, and we didn't hear anything.
Yes.
And we had been back checking. And so we asked her, said, when did you cry? When, sometimes when we first put them to bed, they cried, and she just dropped it. And as we were saying, Madeleine was very articulate. And we kind of looked at each other and thought, did they wake up? Or was it the night before when Amaral had woken up? And Kate had obviously slept in that room. So at the time, we weren't even sure that they had woken up, but now...
I mean, hindsight obviously is a wonderful thing, but there was something about it that obviously stopped us in our track.
Yes.
And it was probably just because our main concern was that the children had woken up. I mean, never for 1 second did I think there was anything sinister going on. I just thought, have they woken up? And obviously, I was upset about that. I didn't, if that had happened, then,
And do you rethink that then when you were going through with this fine comb? Is that the point that you go, I wonder, were they disturbed by something or someone? Is that the point you...
Absolutely. I mean, at that time, I just thought, have they woken up? But I actually, at the end, I thought, probably didn't, to be honest, because Madeleine isn't one to hold back. But as soon as I discovered that Madeleine had been taken, that was the first thing that came into my head, and I thought, oh my God, has someone tried the night before?
You said that the night before, Madeleine and Sean had been very upset.
I didn't say that, actually.
That was in the statement, wasn't it, that was leaked out? Was that not the case? Was she not upset the night before and talked to you the night before?
What we said is there, and it was the next morning, Madeleine had said to us, why didn't you come when we cried last night? And at the time, we thought that's odd, and we looked at each other and we asked her directly when she meant, and she just dropped it and moved on. And we thought, when they're crying, we'd been checking, it would be exceptional for particularly the twins to cry, go back to sleep in between our checks. So obviously kids cry all the time when they're getting bathed, when they're tired, when we're doing that, and we did wonder if it was when they were getting put to bed or around that time. And I think you have to remember, for us, everything is seen in context of the abduction. At that time, we were having a very relaxed family holiday, and yes, it was a little line there, but
hindsight's a wonderful thing. If what happened didn't happen, we wouldn't have, wouldn't have crossed our minds again about Madeleine making that comment. But because of what happened, suddenly that was significant, and that's the reason why we told the police. Madeleine made a comment in passing that, where were you when I cried? Not just to Mummy, by the way, just generally. It just seemed a bit odd. I mean, it was a very kind of passing remark, and we just thought she doesn't usually wake up, and she woke up, that means that, she must have fallen back asleep very quickly. And then she moved on. She moved on.
Anybody with young children will understand that children cry, they wake up at night. During that week, there was one night, and we can't give too much detail because it's part of the investigation file, but there was one night where Madeleine had come through and one of the other twins was crying. So, and when she did mention it to us and we asked her about it, and she just dropped, she was completely fine. And we thought, was it when they were bathing, getting them, first putting them down in that period when they're really tired? Of course, with hindsight, in the context of what happened, of Madeleine being abducted, it's put in a very different light, and it's put in a very different light to us, and of course we emphasise that.
If Madeleine hadn't been abducted, we'd never have thought of that comment again.
Kate also noticed a large brown stain on Madeleine's pyjama top that she couldn't explain at the time. The McCanns had also spent the evening in the restaurant more than once. The staff had a note in their message book at the reception asking for the same table to be booked for 4 evenings, overlooking the apartments. The message even admitted that the group's children were asleep in their rooms, and this note was easily viewable from any guest on site, making it incredibly easy for a predator to have seen it and planned an abduction.
On the Monday morning, Rachel, one of our friends, asked the receptionist, is there any way we could book it for the rest of the week? And she explained, obviously we've got the children sleeping in the apartments nearby, and it was very difficult at that time of night to take them to Millennium Restaurant. So the receptionist, who I believe was trying to be very kind, made a note of it in the staff book. She said, I'll ask and hopefully we'll get that reservation. But I discovered in the police files, which weren't released to us till August 2008, that in December 2007 there was a note, there was an entry into the police files in December 2007 that the receptionist had actually written in the staff book, can this group have a table reserved for the week because they're leaving the children alone in the apartment. And when I discovered that, I just felt sick, because I just thought, well, this is in a staff book, which by nature is seen by all staff. And it was also in the reception area, which obviously guests go through. And it may not have made any difference, I don't know, but
it's another thought process.
To me, I think you're notifying people that the children are there on their own.
I suppose the thing for us, looking back at it, we got into this routine from the Sunday through to the Thursday night, and we were checking very regularly. And we know whoever took Madeleine, it was a high-risk strategy, and you think someone's been, with hindsight, someone's been watching you and watching your routines, and if they knew the kids were there. So all these little things to us now have taken on a much greater significance.
It was on May the 9th when tourists Ray Pollard and Mari Oli claimed to have seen a young girl matching Madeleine's description at a petrol station in Marrakesh in Morocco, while others reported seeing her at a nearby hotel as well, and she supposedly spoke English. Mari stated she had this pretty face and long blonde hair to the shoulders, green eyes. She had a sad look in her face. She said with an accent, "Can we see mummy now?" She was standing alone with a man. She looked sad and a little lost. She looked so alone. I wanted to carry her or something. A little blonde girl in that petrol station in Marrakesh was not a very normal thing to see. It was so strange what I saw, and when I saw the picture it just hit me. She described the man as being in his 30s, around 5'10", and that he didn't look Moroccan. According to Ray, when they returned home to Spain, they learned of Madeleine's disappearance and alerted the authorities of the encounter. Though, according to Kate McCann, she and the other witnesses were never directly interviewed. The couple claimed that they did attempt to alert the authorities, but that they didn't take the report seriously. Ray claimed that the police didn't want to know. If we had known a little girl was missing, then we could have probably done something about it. We didn't know the thing in her eye. By looking at her, you could have said, yes, it's her, or no, it's not her. But we didn't know, and that is the most upsetting part about it. That we had a very close encounter, but we didn't know. On May the 26th, 2007, Martin and Mary Smith, who were in the area at the time on holiday from Ireland, reported seeing a man on the night of the disappearance at around 10 PM on Rua da Escola Primaria, just 500 yards away from apartment 5A. They claimed that he was walking away from the Ocean Club towards Rua 25 de Abril, carrying a young girl who was around 3 to 4 years of age, with blonde hair and pale skin, wearing light-coloured pyjamas and was completely barefoot. She described him as being in his mid-30s, between 5'7" and 5'9", with a slim to normal build with short brown hair and wearing cream or beige trousers. They also noticed that he didn't resemble a tourist and he seemed rather uncomfortable carrying a child.
The main thing for us is knowing if the sighting is credible or not, really. To be honest, we don't go through that emotional roller coaster with regards to the sightings. The only thing that we'll be happy for is when we know it's definitely Madeleine, but we don't go through the ups and downs of that. I mean, the reassuring thing for us is that it implies that people are still looking for Madeleine, and that's really important and encouraging.
I think it's self-protection, really, that if you were up and down like that all the time, you just wouldn't be able to function. So it comes back, as Kate says, to the credibility.
Another witness also claimed to have seen her at the Ibis Hotel in Marrakesh, just a few blocks away, while other reports came in eastern Morocco in Zayo, and other sightings took place in Tarifa in Spain. One photograph was even presented of a young girl supposedly being Madeleine on the back of a woman in Morocco, but it turned out that this child was a 5-year-old called Bouchra from the village of Zina.
I think we've seen the best and the worst, actually.
Precisely, yeah.
Of
What happens when you get a call to say, I think I've seen her? Do you have hope, or are you...
I mean, we try not to get too excited because there's been lots of sightings,
really?
and the key thing with the sightings is they come in. If they come in to us, the investigative team grade them. And if they're recent, a lot of them have been historical, and there's not really much more you can do about it. If someone phones you up now and says, in June 2007 I saw Madeleine in Marrakesh, it's not that helpful, but we log them all, and obviously if there's a pattern of sightings, if it's a recent sighting, then our investigator will phone the people up and try to get more information, and obviously we want to verify things if they've got photographs in.
It's hard, because there's been one or two, I think, where you kind of almost know it's not Madeleine, but you've still got that little hope. And
our only focus is trying to find Madeleine, and there's an innocent child missing. That's, what anyone thinks, that's the key thing. Madeleine is missing, and we're just doing our absolute best to maximise the chances of her being found.
And we need everybody's help really to find her. And so I'd like to say to people, particularly if they're going abroad in the summer, just to keep your eyes open and just remember that she's still missing and she needs and wants to be found.
Many people have said to us that this is a parent's worst nightmare, and it is. It truly is, and it's as bad as you can possibly imagine. But if all 3 of the children had been taken, it could have been even worse than your worst nightmare. And we've got to be strong for them. They're here. They do bring you back to earth, and we cannot, grieve. One, we did grieve, of course we grieve, but ultimately we need to be in control so that we can influence and help in any way possible. Not just Sean and Amaral, but the investigation.
Private investigator David Egger was brought on board, who released an e-fit in August of 2007 of a woman who supposedly asked 2 British men in Barcelona if they were about to deliver her new daughter. She was described as resembling singer and model Victoria Beckham, speaking in an Australian or New Zealand accent and being fluent in Spanish. Though it's worth noting that she also bears a striking resemblance to convicted sex trafficker Ghislaine Maxwell, the ex-girlfriend and accomplice of Jeffrey Epstein, though there's no direct confirmed involvement. She approached the men at a bar at 2 AM and was reported to have been between the ages of 30 and 35 and seeming agitated. But to this day, this woman has never been found. 2 convicted paedophiles in Scotland were also investigated as being involved, but they were running a window cleaning service in the Canary Islands at the time of the disappearance and were soon ruled out. Another unknown man from Northern Ireland was also a potential suspect, who had been released from prison after sexually assaulting his own 4 daughters. He had moved to Carvoeiro, around 25 miles from Praia da Luz, and was confirmed to have been in the area at the time. But he passed away in 2013, and whether or not he was truly responsible remains unknown. It was also later confirmed that many mysterious men had been spotted at the resort during the family's stay. There was a large increase of burglaries in the area at the time, including 2 in the exact same block just a couple of weeks before the disappearance, involving the culprits entering through windows. There were also several reports of mysterious men asking people for donations to charity. On April the 20th, a bedraggled-looking man asked a tourist in the apartment block near 5A for some money, claiming that it was for an orphanage near a speech. Not only was this man described as being pushy and intimidating, but it turned out that this orphanage didn't even exist either. On either April the 25th or 26th, the man who had rented 5A found a man on his balcony who had gained access from the steps on the street. Despite him being described as polite and clean-shaven, he again asked to collect some money for an orphanage. On April the 30th, the granddaughter of the previous owner of apartment 5A claimed to have seen a blonde-haired man leaning against a wall behind the apartments, and he was seen again on the day of the disappearance near the restaurant, looking at the McCann flat. He was described as being Caucasian in his mid-30s with short cropped hair and being described as ugly with spots. It would only continue on the day of the disappearance itself, when 4 charity collections took place, with 2 black-haired men in the streets around the apartment approaching a British homeowner looking for funds for a hostel or a hospice in or near a speech. And they would approach another British tourist in the area later that day as well. On the day of the disappearance, at around 2:30 PM, 2 blonde-haired men were seen on the balcony of apartment 5C, 2 doors down from the McCanns, which is especially suspicious as 5C was unoccupied at the time. Between 4 and 5 PM that day, another blonde man was spotted near the McCann apartment, and by 6, another was seen near their stairwell. It was at 11 PM, which was now after Madeleine had disappeared, when 2 blonde men were seen in a nearby street speaking in raised voices. However, once they realised that they had been noticed, they quickly switched to whispering before walking away. On the same day that Madeleine was last seen, a man was spotted staring at their block of apartments where a white van was parked. There were 12 manual workers at the Ocean Club at the time of the disappearance, including 6 British cleaners in a white van offering services to British tourists, but no evidence was ever found to connect this to the disappearance. Furthermore, that same day, during the late afternoon, a young girl was on the balcony of the apartment above the McCanns when she saw a man leaving through the gate below as though he had exited from a ground floor apartment. But she noticed that he looked around suspiciously before quietly closing the gate behind him with both hands.
I think we both want to find Madeleine and we want to do everything possible to help. And we felt staying close to the investigation and trying to move that on and cooperate was a good thing. That's, this week and the week before highlights how important that is. It would have been a lot more difficult to progress things if we'd been back in the UK. We wouldn't be here this week doing media if it wasn't for the fact that we were appealing for information and people to come forward. And that's the key thing, everyone involved's got to remember there's a little girl who's missing and we're a real family who've been affected by this and traumatised by it so much.
Is there a lesson here, do you think, to other parents?
I think that's a very difficult thing to say, because if you look at it and we try to rationalise things in our head, and ultimately what is done, and we do continually look forward, but we've tried to put it into some sort of perspective for ourselves. We're in a very safe resort. If you think about the millions and millions of British families who go to the Mediterranean each year, really the chances of this happening are in the order of 100 million to 1.
I think at worst we were naive. We're very responsible parents, we love our children very much, and I don't think any parent could ever imagine or consider anything like this happening.
One of the earliest suspects was Robert Murat. Born in Hammersmith, West London, at the time of the disappearance he lived in his mother's house, Casa Liliana, just 150 yards away from the McCann apartment. Furthermore, the sighting that Jane Tanner had reported puts that suspect in the direction of Murat's home that night. A journalist alerted the Portuguese authorities that Murat was asking about the case, which raised extra suspicion. However, he claimed that he had a daughter back in England who was Madeleine's age, and he simply just wanted to do his best to help the investigation. Things didn't help that Jane Tanner claimed to have seen Murat outside the McCann apartment shortly before the disappearance, which was corroborated by an Ocean Club nanny and 2 British tourists on holiday. And once the story broke, 2 of the Tapas 7 also claimed to have seen him, though some have claimed that this is in of itself not too suspicious considering how close he lived at the time, though he and his mother both claimed to have been home that entire evening. On May the 15th, their home was searched with their pool being drained and their cars, computers, phones and videotapes all being examined. Their garden was searched using sniffer dogs and a ground radar, but nothing was found. 2 of his associates were also questioned, and one of them had their car set on fire with the word fala, which translates to speak, sprayed in red on the pavement. Murat, his wife, her ex-husband, as well as their associates, admitted to breaking into Ocean Club apartments, but denied being responsible for what happened to Madeleine McCann. However, despite previously claiming that they were both home all evening, Murat's mother later admitted to having driven past apartment 5A on the night of the disappearance and seeing a young woman in a plum-coloured top acting suspiciously outside. She also claimed to have spotted a small brown rental car speeding towards the McCann apartment down the wrong way of a one-way street. There was never any evidence to directly connect Murat, his mother, or any of his associates to Madeleine's disappearance. Murat would later receive £600,000 in out-of-court settlements for libel based on the media publishing allegations about his involvement, while his associates received £100,000 each.
I just think every day's hard, to be honest. I don't think that's really made it any harder for me. I just think every day without Madeleine is very hard.
I think earlier on I was very conscious that, perhaps our grief and misery may have been affecting other people, and I was not trying to force that on them. I was conscious of that. But our own kids help us keep our feet in the ground, and they give us a lot of joy. and we have to give them love and attention that they deserve as well. So, and I'm not seeing other people enjoying themselves. I don't, that's the way it should be.
You have to keep believing that Madeleine is still going to be found alive and well.
Absolutely. And
Do you ever, though, allow yourself to drift towards negative thoughts?
I think in the early days we did, and I think that's inevitable. I think any parent who's been through this does that, certainly in the first few days. We don't now. We're actually a lot stronger, a lot more hopeful now. And we have to be hopeful. It's what keeps us going and keeps us focused.
I think the key thing, and quite a lot of people have sent us information of little girls. There's 3 or 4, and we've got to remember now, Madeleine's 8, so we're not looking for that. And what the artists say about these pictures are they don't have to be exact likenesses. The key thing is challenging the assumption of what you're looking for. And kids and other people look at other kids in a different way.
It was like, it doesn't matter how closely the picture resembles the child, so long as it does the job.
Another suspect was 64-year-old Raymond Hewlett, who only lived an hour away from the resort at the time. He was wanted for several sexual assaults on young girls and remained on the run when Madeleine went missing. He also supposedly confessed to someone that he knew what happened to Madeleine McCann, though he later retracted this statement before passing away from cancer in Germany in December 2009, never confirming his true involvement in the case, though he did supposedly mention taking a business trip to Morocco in the past. Another suspect was Urs Hans von Esch. On July the 31st, 2007, 5-year-old Eilenia Lenhard vanished and was later found dead in September from toluene poisoning. Von Esch was implicated in this murder and was living in Spain at the time. But again, this remains unconfirmed, though many have noted the similar physical appearances between the two girls. Hans von Esch ended his own life with a gunshot wound before he could ever be convicted. Another possibility was broadcaster Clement Freud, who was accused of having a history of child sexual abuse. Not only did he own a home in Praia da Luz, but he had even befriended the McCanns in the weeks after the disappearance, though his family claimed that he was in the UK when Maddie went missing. Our next potential suspect was Inspector Gonzalo Amaral, who was actually the officer in charge of the PJ inquiry in Portugal. 3 years before Madeleine's disappearance, 8-year-old Joanna Cipriano went missing just 7 miles away from Praia da Luz. She was never found, nor was any potential murder weapon. Initially, Joanna's mother and uncle confessed to being responsible for her murder, but the former later retracted this and claimed that officers had beaten the confession out of her. Though Amaral wasn't present when the alleged assault took place, he was accused of helping to cover it up for others. 4 officers were charged with the assault, while Amaral himself was convicted of concealing evidence and providing a false testimony, receiving an 18-month suspended sentence. Some have accused him of being responsible for Madeleine's disappearance, but there is no evidence to back this up.
Although the circumstances aren't nice, the important thing is in the public consciousness that children can disappear off the radar for years and years and years and be found. And a key thing with the younger children is the younger the child, the more likely they are to be taken to be kept. So, it is important and people need to be aware, and the public can play a big role in this.
Everything we have done has been by taking counsel from experts around us, but we were advised that generally raising awareness of a disappearance will help in the search for that person. It helped Kate and I, and we have taken strength not just from the people who have supported us, but we have taken strength ourselves by being active in the search. And I think, if we had, for example, stayed indoors, locked ourselves away, and just waited and waited and waited for a month, we would be shells of the people we are.
Even in week 3 or 4, and what happened in about the middle of June, after about 5 or 6 weeks, things were going really very, very quiet, and I was actually quite glad of that. And I thought we would start to get back to a sort of more normal existence and a quieter form of campaigning, using the internet, viral, raising, broadening the issues, the political issues which have been highlighted to us. And I saw that as the long-term focus. And as I've already alluded to, I don't think necessarily having newspaper headlines of the image of Madeleine being thrust to people every single day actually may help. So, not particularly. What we dread is the worst news that, you know, Madeleine's not alive.
My hope of Madeleine being out there is no less than it was almost 10 years ago. I mean, apart from those first 48 hours, nothing actually has changed since then. I mean, I think the difficult thing has always been, how will we find her? You know, because you're relying on the police doing everything they can, and you're relying on somebody with information coming forward.
I think that that's so important, that everyone thinks, well, what could have happened? But some of the scenarios with other people who've been abducted and kept, it's just so unbelievable that you think, that how could that have happened? And that's probably what's going to happen with Madeleine's case.
The next suspect was Euclides Monteiro, a 40-year-old former Ocean Club employee who had previously been fired for theft. Investigators began using mobile phone tracking techniques with the help of the surrounding countries to trace those who had used a mobile phone near the apartment around the time of the abduction. This led them to Euclides, who had been using the resort that night, and it was believed he had been committing burglaries in order to finance a drug habit. Furthermore, he had previously been questioned about break-ins and the sexual assault of children, but he was cleared due to the lack of DNA evidence. A man had also been spotted entering holiday homes occupied by British families in 4 different incidents in the western region of Algarve in the 3 years preceding Madeleine's disappearance. He had sexually assaulted 5 girls in their beds, aged 7 to 10. He spoke English but with an undistinguishable foreign accent with slow speech which was sometimes slurred, had short, dark, unkempt hair, tanned skin, and was described as having a distinctive smell. He was seen wearing a long-sleeved burgundy top with a white circle on the back, but most in the PJ were convinced that this was Monteiro. Unfortunately, he passed away in 2009 in a tractor accident before he can ever reveal the truth.
It might not be as quick as we want, but there's real progress being made. So I think we need to take heart from that, and we just have to go with the process and follow it through, whatever it takes for as long as it takes. You know, but there's still hope that we can find Madeleine.
Where we were at the time, in the environment, it was the furthest thing from our mind, and it's clearly brought this home. These crimes happen, they're commoner than we think. A lot of crimes are unreported, maybe possibly even underreported in terms of official recording, but clearly underreported in the media, and it is terrible. But it's a real life thing, these crimes, and they're horrific. It's a crime, and there is an abductor out there, and they may strike again. I'm not saying that everyone should think about that. Clearly, if you are in a locked apartment, your house, there's people there, the chances are very slim, and this is so rare. There is no evidence to say she's dead. We are doing our best to find her and to get information to help us find her. And this is an international problem, it's an international inquiry, and we want people to come forward whether or not they have done previously.
The next and most recent suspect is Christian Brüeckner, who was already in prison on several drug trafficking and child sexual abuse charges, as well as the rape of a 72-year-old American woman in the same area where Madeleine went missing. German prosecutors were so convinced that he was responsible, they claimed to have concrete evidence that he was the man they were looking for. However, this came with its own long list of problems. Under Portuguese law, under certain cases, it isn't possible to list someone as a person of interest in a case after 15 years, which is necessary to file any criminal charges. Brüeckner wasn't considered a suspect until 2020, so they had to act quickly. However, there was a discrepancy over his last known German address which caused delays as there was confusion as to which German court was responsible for his trial. He wasn't named an official suspect until April the 22nd, 2022, believing that he was living in a borrowed Volkswagen camper van in the Algarve region at the time. Investigators supposedly found substantial evidence against him, but they needed some more in order to convict. They also discovered that he had a 30-minute phone call on the day of the disappearance, and they appealed to find out who had made it, leading to his British girlfriend contacting the authorities to claim that it was her. He supposedly told her on the phone, "I have a job to do in Praia da Luz tomorrow. It's a horrible job, but it's something I have to do and it will change my life. You won't be seeing me for a while." Brüeckner's phone was used within 5 minutes of the disappearance, and some believe that he abducted and murdered her before dumping the body into the water near the Arada Dam 31 miles away. A child's sock was discovered there at one point, but despite numerous searches, no human remains were ever found. His car was a Jaguar XJR6, which strangely was registered to a brand new owner the very day after Madeleine's disappearance, and an anonymous witness, only referred to as Helga B, claimed that he had bragged to her about Madeleine not screaming during the abduction, though Brüeckner has always denied being responsible.
How would you describe Christian Brüeckner?
A dangerous man.
Did you kidnap and kill Madeleine McCann?
My defence lawyers have told me to say nothing on this topic, and unfortunately I'm going to have to stick to that.
He strenuously denies being involved in the Madeleine McCann case.
I don't believe him. He know what I saw. He know it.
You believe he took Madeleine McCann?
Yeah.
I knew him from the television and newspapers, and I met him some few days ago. He looks like a normal German guy.
I want Christian go behind bars for the case of Madeleine McCann now. This was him. I'm 100% sure. He can say I'm innocent. I know what I saw, and I know he is a dangerous man. And the best is he never came out.
He told me there are many police officers there and around him, and he didn't feel safe.
So he felt like there were too many police around?
Yes, that he's looked every second, like behind them, and he told me everywhere's police.
See, he said he wanted to come somewhere where there were less police.
Yeah.
I tell him like this, I don't understand how somebody can rob the little children from a hotel, yeah? And then he said to me, yeah, she was not screaming. And I was saying, okay.
She was not screaming?
Yeah, she was not screaming. And I know what I hear from him. I'm not stupid. And I was saying, okay, how he knows this?
What do you believe he meant by that?
He have to do something with this. Yeah, he take Maddie out from this hotel, yeah. I was thinking, yeah, he is involved, sure, in this, yeah.
Why do you think he said it?
Is this coming out from his mouth by accident?
He comes up to me, and then the first moment I did it clearly that I know who he is. And he told me, yeah, everything what is on the media is not right. He told me also that some people want to make him cold, that he don't believe that he live long.
Really?
Yes. He told me, I don't do long here. Maybe someone will murder me. That's what he told me.
Did he say who he thinks will murder?
No, I didn't ask him who like this. And he told me also he had some special informations, and that's the reason why they're all behind him.
What special information does he have?
I don't know. Maybe something with Maddie, maybe something other about people in his... He was a pedophile, and maybe in this area, maybe his clients, maybe he was client of someone famous, I don't know.
I wanted to ask them to stop this witch hunt against me and give me my life back.
I saw a woman, she was handcuffed, and some guy in black.
Could you see his face?
No, he had a black mask.
Did the man ever take his mask off?
Yeah. In the end of the video, he sitting in the end of the bed. He was so hot, sweating, and he takes the mask off.
Who did you see?
Christian Brüeckner, yeah. 100%, yeah, I saw him, yeah.
What did you think?
Yeah, in this moment I was shocked.
Did you come across another video?
This was a German young child,
Young child?
Yeah, I think she was 14.
What was the first thing he said to you?
That he needed a SIM card, and I told him, I need your ID. And he asked me if it's possible without ID, and I told him, no, I don't know who you are, it's not possible.
On his ID, did it show that he was limited to Germany for travel?
No, it was a normal ID card without any limitation.
Did he say why he wanted a mobile phone?
He asked me if he can use WhatsApp like this, how he can do it. Yes. He told me that he want to use the phone to contact his lawyer. Because he had nothing with him, no phone, nothing.
And there were no conditions against him buying a phone and going on the internet?
No, I don't know. No. He was eating kebab on my neighbor's shop. He was sitting at first outside. He looks around in the middle of the city. Maybe he checked up, maybe it was for him also a great feeling to be free and to see the cars, the people, everything is rolling. I think it's not like a prison.
How long did he spend with you?
About 1.5 hours.
Is that normal for someone?
No, it's not normal, but he needed help for the registration of the phone. He wanted to, because if you buy a new phone, you have to make an email and you have to fill your data, then your name, your birthday and everything. We talked about Portugal. I told him that I went there on vacation and I liked the area. And he told me in what city he was living and what he was working.
Did he say he had nothing to do with Madeleine McCann?
I didn't ask him especially of this case. I asked him about everything, so completely, you know. I didn't told him what is with the old lady or what is with Maddie or no. He told me that he has special information about some people and that's why they want to finish him.
Did he mention money or amounts or anything?
No. I think he was talking about the USB sticks he had. Look, he told me, I have information, I can solve the scandal of the century.
Christian knows the Ocean Club very well. He was working there in the Ocean Club like a pool boy. Yeah? And I think Christian was thinking, okay, go in one apartment and take some stuff from this apartment. By this time, he don't take baggage, luggage, some stuff. No, he take her.
German police, as well as the Portuguese authorities, searched abandoned buildings between Praia da Luz and the cottage where Brüeckner lived at the time, using heavy machinery and ground-penetrating radar. They searched his home to discover animal bones, clothing fragments and firearms, but nothing to directly connect him to the disappearance of Madeleine, though he supposedly had his hard drive removed, which contained child abuse images as well as writings describing abductions and children's items. His trial in 2024 was over 5 unrelated sexual offences committed in Portugal between 2000 and 2017, but he was acquitted of all of these charges, and on September the 17th, 2025, he was released from prison, though the police admitted that they would continue to monitor his activity.
Actually, I'm not feeling free. I still have this ankle track, and I'm followed by police.
Christian Brüeckner is now coming out of prison. He's going to be a free man. What do you think of that?
This is really hard. A big criminal man, to let him go as a free man, and the Germans not found enough evidence to bring him again behind the bars. I don't understand this. Now I know there will come out a really dangerous man. Yeah. I don't have any more confidence on the German justice. The best way is the English police will take the case of Madeleine McCann and Christian Brüeckner. Christian is a big liar. He know what I saw. He know it.
However, over time, many began to question the validity of this disappearance and began to look inward to the Tapas 7 themselves. While the group always insisted that they had checked on their children every half an hour, the staff at the restaurant disagreed, claiming it to have been every 45 minutes and sometimes even an hour. Others have also questioned this arrangement, considering the amount of people with the frequency of children checks every 30 minutes, there would have been moments of barely anybody at the table, or there would have been no point in even having dinner to begin with, considering everyone leaving and departing during the meal. Jane Tanner claimed to have seen a man carrying his child and that she had passed Jerry on her way, but what makes this sighting strange is that Jerry and the other man never recalled seeing her at this point. It's unlikely that they wouldn't have seen each other, even at night, considering how narrow the street was. And this led people to believe that Jane had made up this entire sighting, possibly as an alibi. While Kate McCann claimed Tanner passed this sighting along to the Portuguese police immediately, it wasn't forwarded onto the media until about a month later. However, years after the fact, this man was actually located. It wasn't Robert Murat, but rather an innocent British holidaymaker collecting his daughter from the Ocean Club night crash. Matthew Oldfield was also considered a suspect, based on the fact that he offered to check on the children for Kate instead, even more so considering he didn't actually enter their room to ensure they were safe, and some believe that he may have passed her through the window to an accomplice. It didn't help matters when he changed his story 3 times as well. On the day of the disappearance, he claimed that once Kate sounded the alarm, everyone entered the apartment and the children's room, which some have also questioned as they didn't rush to check on their own children instead, but that they saw the window was open and the shutter was up. However, just 7 days later, he suddenly changed his story and claimed that he didn't enter her bedroom. However, months later, he then claimed that he never entered the apartment at all. However, our final and most famous suspects are Kate and Jerry McCann themselves. For years, the duo have faced criticism all over the internet for leaving their children unattended several nights in a row in a foreign country, and having never faced prosecution for child endangerment, with 17,000 people signing an online petition for Leicestershire Social Services to investigate them further.
We've been through and are going through that much pain with not having Madeleine with us that anything that's written or said really is just a minor hurdle in comparison, and we'll ride through it. Some of the nasty ones are almost nasty for nasty's sake, and I think that's been incredibly shocking because, you know, we're not like that and we don't know people that are like that, and it's quite, I suppose it's quite scary and a bit of an eye-opener really that people can be filled with so much venom, and whatever we do they'll write and criticise. Yeah. We still strongly want to do what we believe is the right thing to do, what's the right thing for Madeleine, what's the right thing for us, and at the minute that is to stay. And we're not going to be bullied into going home, you know.
The Ocean Club offered babysitters on site as well as a crash, which the McCanns opted to not utilise. This led to anti-McCann websites, kidnapping threats of one of their twins, and a barrage of verbal abuse online and in the media.
This is a resort that offers childcare facilities, babysitting facilities. Why then were the 3 young children left alone in the apartment while you were having a meal?
I mean, I think if you know the location here, which you've seen, what we did, I think, and we've been reassured by the fact in the thousands of messages from people who've either done exactly the same or said they would have done the same. And for us, it really wasn't very much different to having dinner in your garden and the proximity of the location. I think it's fair to say that, you know, the guilt that we feel having not been there at that moment, irrespective of whether we had been in the other bedroom or not, will never leave us. We were dining at the Tapas bar 50 yards away, and can't comment too much in terms of our patterns and our routines, given the fact that that's subject to the investigation. But
I've said before, we both said, you know, if we'd had to think for 1 second that this was taking a risk, it wouldn't have happened. So, I mean, I think that says how safe we felt, you know.
Yeah, I mean, it was incredibly quiet, family orientated, we were incredibly close, and you know, we did feel incredibly safe here.
Was there an option to have childminders? Was there an option to have somebody listening in by a reception? Were they options for you in the hotel as a matter of interest?
No, there were babysitters, but they were, I think they were limited, but I mean, to be perfectly honest, we didn't really think we needed to be, but we were so close to the apartment.
Yes.
I've said this quite a few times.
We didn't even consider it, to be honest. That's how safe we felt. I mean, you may have heard that other Mark Warner resorts had what they call a baby listening service.
Yes.
So one of the staff will go around and listen outside the apartments to see if anyone's crying.
Sure.
But as it turned out, they didn't have one in Praia da Luz because it was a little bit more spread out, so it was harder for the staff to go around. But we effectively thought we were doing our own baby listening service, only it was like a child checking. So
Because we have obviously the resort you were in had lots of nanny facilities, and they weren't that expensive to use, and you both were professionals earning money. Another criticism that's put to you is, why didn't you just pay to have a nanny if you wanted to go out for dinner?
Yeah, I mean, it's not a question of money. We did what we thought was best in the kids' routines, and I think as parents we had a very good routine in terms of the whole bath, bed, story type thing. And I take your point, but for me, you know, if your children are asleep upstairs in a bedroom and you're dining in the garden, you're out of sight and you can't hear them. And that's the similar thing to me. We were,
except I guess that most people's homes are secure.
Sure.
You know, this was not a secure property. People could come in and off the street if they wanted to. That's where the criticism, I guess, comes at its most fierce towards you. Is, you know, you're intelligent people, and you were certainly good parents. There's no one's questioning that from all accounts that we've all heard. It's just when you have people coming in and off a street like that, and it's not your home and it's not really secure.
Again, I mean, I think it's back to the safety issue. We did not perceive an element of threat, and child abduction is so rare. Why would you ever have thought that someone was going to get into an apartment and steal your child? It just didn't enter our head. If it had, it wouldn't have happened.
Yeah, we've been through all these questions day in, day out.
Yeah.
Why, how, why? And I can only, you know, say to myself, well, Kate, you felt really safe, and I know how much I love my children, and there's no way I'd have taken a risk.
I think the worst thing though about the focus on our behaviour, and you know, if we could change it we would have. We can't change it, but it takes the focus away from the abductor, and that becomes quite frustrating for us because Madeleine's still missing, and that person or those responsible for taking her are still at large.
Kate McCann had faced a lot of criticism for her demeanour, many describing her as a seemingly cold and emotionless mother, some even comparing her to Lindy Chamberlain, who was convicted of the murder of her own baby. However, Kate was advised by abduction experts that she shouldn't cry on camera as the kidnapper would enjoy her distress.
You know, Mike, it's not a new side of me. You know, people make judgments. You know.
I think there's two things, isn't it? There's a public persona, and then there's your real life. As Brits, we're pretty stoical, and you know, that stiff upper lip type thing. And the other thing, for all of our media appearances, particularly early on, we had to really build ourselves up to go up and do it. And then we had the added situation of when we did the direct appeal, don't show too much emotion.
I cannot love Madeleine more than I love her. You know, I would never have taken a risk. It was something that wasn't even a decision. That's how safe it felt, you know.
What
and it didn't help.
Did we have to suggest it wasn't going to be safe? We were dining 50 yards away. We were making regular checks. We were going into the apartment, always quiet, every night. And if we had thought it was unsafe for a minute, if there was any conscious element that somebody was going to get into that apartment and steal your child, then of course we wouldn't have done that.
Personally, I feel we've been persecuted enough about this matter, and we do that to ourselves, so we don't really need to keep going over it. I mean, I've said many times, I couldn't love Madeleine more than I do. I wouldn't have done anything if I had any idea there's an element of risk. And I can't say that anymore, really, you know.
And there's two things there. The first thing is we felt completely safe. If we had had any inkling that it was unsafe, we wouldn't have done it. The second thing there is we can't change it. You know, what we have done is we discovered Madeleine was taken, and we have done everything there. You know,
and
no matter how many times we go.
Let's not forget, there's been an evil crime committed. You know, whatever anybody says about us, is it right for somebody to go into your apartment and take your child out your bed?
What we do know is that speculation certainly doesn't help us. We know a number of the facts, and I have not seen any evidence or know of any direct evidence to have changed our viewpoint to what we've held for the last 100 days. And you know, we've said all along, and everything we've done during the last 100 days is focused on the belief that Madeleine was alive when she was abducted, and certainly we were encouraged in that respect, and everything we've done is to increase the chances of her being returned.
They both refused to take part in the Netflix documentary, whilst encouraging others to also not participate.
The problem we have is we've always said that we would leave no stone unturned, and we don't know what information is in the inquiry, what is not in the inquiry, what has been done and what hasn't been done. I think it's unlikely everything has been done, and we need to know that. It's our daughter. We strongly believe she's still out there. People may not have come forward before. They may have come forward, the information may not be seen as relevant. So we really want to appeal to people, and clearly there was going to be absolutely huge media attention on us, and this is trying to capitalise on that. There was going to be media attention whether we participated or not.
However, this criticism caused pure frustration to the family, as they felt the authorities weren't actually looking for their daughter and had already decided that they were responsible. All we have ever wanted is to find her, uncover the truth and bring those responsible to justice. We will never give up hope of finding Madeleine alive, but whatever the outcome may be, we need to know, as we need to find peace.
You'd probably hear, but we've had that much support from people. I don't think we can say thank you enough, really. I mean, that's been so important. And that is the main thing, really, that far outweighs anything negative. I know my daughter, and I know what I found, and that's all I can say.
I mean, that's very important. We're in a very difficult situation because the file is still under judicial secrecy. We're not allowed to give investigational detail, and therefore, you know, there's a number of issues about the way the room was, the situation, and we are as certain as anyone can be, knowing the facts that we know.
And we know more than a lot of people that are actually standing up there giving opinions. We know more facts, and a lot of people are just speculating. I mean, I've had so many supportive letters from families, from other mothers, and they've said, Kate, you know, we've done that, we do that, you know, who would have ever thought that something as horrible as that would happen, you know.
It is incredibly rare what's happened to us, but I think, you know, with the way we've talked about it before, it felt very similar to dining in your garden. And I know that, you know, have you ever left a child unattended for any length of time, whether it be you're downstairs and the child's upstairs, or you went to the garage, you know. If we could turn back the clock, you know, and rewind, of course we would.
Yeah, we're just sorry we weren't there at that minute.
Do you blame yourselves regularly?
Certainly the first few days, I think the guilt was very difficult. But I think as time goes on, we feel stronger, and we felt very supported from that point of view.
It's not right that there should be stuff written every day when there's not the facts to sustain it. We need to get people focused on the facts and what is out there, and there's been far too much innuendo, speculation, myth, rumour and lie.
You know, there's no doubt that we'll always bitterly regret our decision that night, the way we were leaving the children and checking on them. And in the early weeks, months, even years, to be honest, I used to just persecute myself over it. And you know, if you could put yourself in your child's place, you know, you'd do it in a second, you know.
How do you deal with the fact that more and more people seem to be pointing the finger at you, saying the way you behave is not the way people would normally behave if their child is abducted, and they seem to imply that you might have something to do with it?
To be honest, I don't actually think that is the case. I think that's a very small minority of people that are criticising us. You know, the facts are out there. We were dining very close to the children, and we were checking on them very, very regularly. You know, we are very responsible parents, and we love our children so much, and I think it's only a very few people that are actually criticising us.
No one hurts you as much as the hurt that we had, but you know, we've tried to remain very positive in our outlook, and even small levels of criticism make that hard when you're trying to do everything in your power to get your daughter back.
100 officers searched over 9 miles around the area, including the apartments of the Tapas 7, but nothing was found. Though things were about to get much worse for the McCanns. Investigators brought in 2 Springer Spaniel sniffer dogs named Keela and Eddie. While Keela was a forensic investigation dog trained to give a passive alert to the scent of human blood by placing her nose close to the spot and freezing in position, Eddie was a cadaver dog, trained to bark at the scent of human cadavers and nothing else. He is even able to smell it shortly after the death, and even if the remains were buried, incinerated, or had been engulfed by water. It was on July the 31st when the dogs were taken to the apartment, a nearby wasteland, and the beach. While the latter 2 locations turned up nothing, the apartment did. Both dogs sensed something behind the sofa in the living room, while Eddie alerted near the wardrobe in Kate and Jerry's bedroom. At this point, a warrant was obtained to search the house that the couple had rented on Rua de Flores, as well as their rented Renault Scenic that they had hired 24 days after the disappearance. During a search of the house on August the 2nd, Eddie sensed something on Madeleine's cuddle cat toy lying in the living room, while Keela found nothing.
I notice you've got Madeleine's cuddly toy with you as always. How did that start, and what comfort does it bring you?
Where did it come from, or?
No, how did the idea come to just have it in your hands all the time?
Well, it's something that Madeleine has with her every night, and if she's upset or not well, then she has Cuddle Cat. And so it provided me with a little bit of comfort. It's something of Madeleine close to me.
The police took away the cuddle cat, some of the family's clothes, a pair of latex gloves, suitcases, a notepad, 2 diaries, one of which was started by Kate after Madeleine went missing, and a Bible that she had borrowed from a friend. Strangely inside, one particular passage had been marked from 2 Samuel, which involved the death of a child. During the investigation of these items, Eddie sensed something on the box of clothes as well, but it was argued that as both Kate and Jerry were family doctors, they may have encountered a corpse and therefore carried the scent. It was on August the 6th when both dogs were taken to an underground car park to find 10 cars spread around 20 to 30 feet apart, including the McCanns rental car and Robert Murat's vehicle. Eddie immediately went to the McCanns car and alerted just outside the driver's door. The next day, Keela also sent something to the rear driver's side, as well as inside the boot and the map compartment in the driver's door.
We felt strongly that we had already been eliminated, just with the circumstances that we were there, the timings, we were in a group, etc. And we'd given our statements, but I think it was the pressure on them. And when the dogs came, which was actually something that happened at our request, because we wanted a more thorough search, and the National Police Improvement Agency recommended these dogs. And basically when the dogs barked in the apartment around their car, suddenly it gave them an opportunity to portray us as if we were involved, but it's ludicrous.
Because they said the dogs scented blood, that was possibly Madeleine's and so on.
The key thing with these dogs is, if you look at any of the manuals, they say that they should be used as intelligence, and any alert has to be corroborated with the forensics. And of course, none of the forensics come back suggesting anything at all.
It was suggested you washed Cuddle Cat, the little toy that Madeleine was, clutched, and again you said?
I mean, I just think it's ridiculous. It was 70 days later. I've been holding Cuddle Cat the whole time just for comfort. It was filthy and suntan lotion.
Covered in suntan lotion and sand.
If that was really significant, if people think that was significant and that means something, why wasn't Cuddle Cat taken on the night or the day after and taken off for forensics? I mean, that's 70 days when they could have taken Cuddle Cat.
Some hair and other fibres were collected from the vehicle and apartment 5A, being sent away for forensic analysis. It was at this point that PJ completely abandoned the abduction theory, and were now convinced that Madeleine may have been sedated to help her sleep that night, and she could have accidentally died before the parents or the Tapas 7 made the discovery and disposed of the body.
Did you kill your daughter?
No, that's an emphatic no. I mean, the ludicrous thing is what's been purported from Portugal is that Madeleine died in the apartment by an accident and we hid her body. Well, when did she have the accident and died? Because the only time she was left unattended was when we were at dinner. So if she died then, how could we have disposed or hidden her body, when there was an immediate search? It's just nonsense. So, and if she died when we were in the apartment or fell and did something, why would we cover that up?
I have never heard before that anyone considers us suspects in this, and the Portuguese police certainly don't. And without getting into too much detail about the circumstances, we were with a large group of people And there is absolutely no way Kate and I are involved in this abduction.
Is Madeleine alive, Jerry?
Well, I think the key thing for us, there's absolutely nothing to suggest that she isn't. And as parents, I don't think any parent could give up their child without having concrete evidence that they weren't alive. So in our mind, Madeleine's alive and out there and waiting to be found. And
Kate, will you see her again?
I certainly feel that. I don't feel like this is the end at all. As Jerry just said, there's no evidence. There's been several searches. There's been a search by experts from Britain, and nothing was turned up. These cases of missing children, again, in just incredible situations that you'd never believe.
The Forensic Science Service were using a technique to analyse the fibres known as low copy number testing. This is used when only a few cells are available, but this can sometimes lead to contamination or misinterpretation. It was on September the 3rd when John Lowe from their team claimed that the sample collected from the boot contained 15 out of 19 of Madeleine's DNA components. But since it wasn't a complete match, it was impossible to determine conclusively. It's worth noting that usually, on average, a sibling would share around 9.5 of her DNA components, which is 50%. So these 15 belonging to either of the twins is incredibly unlikely. A complex LCN DNA result, which appeared to have originated from at least 3 people, was obtained from cellular material recovered from the luggage compartment section. Within the DNA profile of Madeleine McCann, there are 20 DNA components represented by 19 peaks on a chart. Of these 19 components, 15 are present within the result from this item. There are 37 components in total. There are 37 components because there are at least 3 contributors, but there could be up to 5 contributors. In my opinion, therefore, this result is too complex for meaningful interpretation or inclusion. We cannot answer the question, is this match genuine or a chance match? According to Kate McCann, the PJ approached her and made her an offer. They claimed that if she admitted that Madeleine accidentally died in their apartment and that she hid the body, she would only serve 2 years, while Jerry wouldn't be charged at all and would be free to walk. But they both refused. At this point, they were officially named as suspects, but were advised by their lawyers to not answer any questions. Despite the results being inconclusive, the PJ allegedly told Jerry that it was a 100% match. But regardless of their legal advice, while Kate refused to answer 48 questions, Jerry didn't listen and answered them anyway. Furthermore, the journalists in Portugal were also told that the DNA was a complete match, leading to this false news being published across several British newspapers, slandering the McCanns' names further.
It's a terrible situation, actually. Apart from your daughter going missing, the other thing that we need to mention is that we were told explicitly that we couldn't talk about detail of the actual investigation.
Did that make you seem evasive then?
No, but under judicial secrecy.
Yes.
And the police weren't allowed to talk, and then we were getting all these leaks and then lies and smears and misinformation that was put out, and it was almost impossible to combat it because we weren't actually allowed to say anything, and no one was actually releasing. So there was one and I strongly feel it was a strategic approach to, because of the media attention and pressure from the UK particularly. The Portuguese were under a lot of pressure, and after the first day or two they did try hard, but I think that pressure started to make them feel that this had to go away.
Matt Baggott of the Leicestershire Police admitted that they decided to not correct the reporters, as they wanted to remain on good terms with the PJ in order to locate Madeleine sooner. Suspicion had always fallen on the parents fairly early on due to how they were acting in interviews, with Jerry using certain words such as deciding to market Madeleine to keep her in the public eye.
I think the highlight's really just been the team working together. Obviously it's been quite tough. There's been a lot of miles and a lot of climbing, and there's obviously highs and lows and that, and the fact that we've all worked together so well. And I think we all know why we're here. We know it's for such a good cause, and that just keeps you going. Yeah, I know this won't help Madeleine. But I'd hate to think that any other child would have to go through this, and their family would have to go through what we've been through. So, although Madeleine has been very much on my mind through this, I know that is helping lots of other children. So, and I think we all feel like that. I think everybody's thinking like that as well. So,
I think, from quite early on, we've obviously wanted to know a little bit more about the scale of the problem, and it's massive actually. I didn't realise how little I knew really, and I think knowing that, it's very hard to turn a blind eye to it, you know. And we just felt if there was anything, obviously at the minute our priority is Madeleine, but we just felt if there's anything that we could do that might help other children, that might make the world that little bit, even if it's a tiny bit safer for children, then something good has come out of it.
Chief Inspector Tavares da Almeida signed a 9-page report claiming that Madeleine passed away in apartment 5A accidentally, and that the McCanns and the Tapas 7 conspired together to cover it up, hiding the body before faking an abduction. The PJ seized Kate McCann's diary and Jerry's laptop, whilst also tracing all phone calls between the couple and their 7 friends, but nothing is confirmed to have been found. It was on September the 24th when Kate paid British security company Control Risks to analyse hair samples from the twins. The brother and sister somehow slept during the abduction, so she was concerned that they had been sedated. She claimed to have requested this to have been done months earlier, but it was denied. A sample was also taken of Kate's to try to refute allegations that she herself was on medication, but no drugs were found in any of their systems. They also seem to have a poor relationship with the Portuguese police, with many of the interview transcripts or even private excerpts from Kate's diary being leaked to the media without their consent. This actually led to the national director of the PJ, Alípio Ribeiro, resigning due to media pressure, claiming that the police were just obsessed with naming the McCanns as the only suspects. Many have also attributed their potential motive as being the sheer financial gain made from the case. Less than 2 weeks after the disappearance, the couple set up Madeleine's Fund, Leaving No Stone Unturned Limited, to try to raise money and awareness, but this caused many to accuse them of trying to profit off of the entire charade.
To mark the 100 days, we'll be launching the YouTube channel called Don't You Forget About Me, which is a channel for missing children. And there's been a lot of work going on behind the scenes on that. I think it's a fantastic idea, and we're launching it in collaboration, obviously, with the International Centre for Missing and Exploited Children and Google themselves, who will be hosting it via YouTube. And
both of whom have been incredibly supportive and just welcome the idea.
Their website attracted 58 million hits in the first 2 days, with the couple flying all through Europe to try to spread the word. Madeleine was put on the front page of several British newspapers and magazines, selling hundreds of thousands of copies, and the couple even signed a publishing deal to release a book about the disappearance. Thousands of videos on YouTube covered the case. The name of Madeleine McCann was everywhere.
I think it's something tangible that could benefit other people and give renewed interest to other missing kids as well, and a medium that younger people use and tens of millions of people use YouTube. There were over 229 videos of Madeleine on it already.
About 6 weeks ago.
Yeah, so it's incredible.
Why do you think it has provoked such enormous public support, of which I don't think we've ever seen before?
I think there's a conglomeration of circumstances that have come together in this situation. The fact that we're on holiday, very safe resort, recognised for that. And of course the world has changed in terms of information technology and the speed of response, in terms of the media coming here and us being prepared to some extent use that to try and influence the campaign. But above all else, it's touched everyone. You don't have to be a parent for this to have a major impact on you. And I think it's also been very, very important, and some of the things which we have done and said, which we didn't realise what impact they would have, but so many thousands of people are doing small things to help us find Madeleine, because the worst feeling was helplessness, the absolute worst, that we had no bearing on finding her. But once you start to do that, then you start to feel a bit better. And I hope we're going to look back at the end of all this and say that we have done everything in our power, but also that other people are helping in so many other ways and they feel that they are part of it. I think though the immediate reaction when we got back from the police station was shock at the number that had turned up.
Yeah.
And I want to make it clear, we didn't actually call the media, and although we had the debate overnight when nothing seemed to be happening, but other people had called the media. Rachel had called a friend from BBC and friends at home who we'd been spoken to, and we'd alerted the British consul and were saying nothing's been done.
Just remember, we were ringing people at home, just screaming,
Frantic.
just full of fear and saying, please help us.
And praying. We felt so helpless. We're just I mean, we were on our knees, but my immediate reaction was I thought about media intrusion and the distress that everything we had, but at the same time, something was kicking in saying we've got to appeal for information.
After 3 months, their website had over 80 million visitors, and even as recently as 2025, the UK government approved a further £100,000 in funding the search. Brian Kennedy from Everest Windows supported the couple financially, as well as receiving millions of donations from celebrities such as Simon Cowell, J.K. Rowling and Richard Branson. The McCanns even admitted that these donations paid for 2 of their own mortgage payments.
Most people are familiar with the term I would use, which is monstering, where someone's on the front page of the news, and happened to us with Madeleine. Photographers literally ramming their cameras against our car window.
Things escalated on October the 2nd when Amaral was officially removed from the investigation after telling newspapers that the British police were only looking into leads that could help the McCanns and not the case as a whole. After being let go, he put together a book accusing the McCanns of staging the entire ordeal, which sold over 180,000 copies, later being turned into a documentary which was viewed by over 2 million people. This led to the McCanns taking legal action against him and his publisher, with the Madeleine Fund covering their legal fees. They ended up winning €600,000 in damages, though Amaral did successfully appeal the decision, and the McCanns received no payout. In December that year, the PJ wanted to film a reconstruction of the events in Praia da Luz, and they even asked the real McCanns on the Tapas 7 to play their respective parts, but they all declined.
There is a dialogue, and that's been reported clearly that there's a date out there and it's under discussion and no final decision has been made. I have to say that the prospect of going back with the world media trying to watch a reconstruction doesn't appeal us, and how emotional it is for us to consider that. I think also the other issue is how much more information will that get us 1 year on? You know, we have told everything to the police.
We'll do anything if we believe it will help to find Madeleine, but that's the issue really.
And you know, our friends have voluntarily taken part in recent interviews in Leicestershire. They've given all the information, they've had lots of opportunity, and you know, our friends stayed in Portugal for 10 days after Madeleine was taken.
By the 10-year anniversary alone, the investigation had cost around £11.75 million. However, the relationship with the Portuguese police grew even worse when the couple used the funds to hire several private investigators, one of which included Brian Kennedy, who travelled to Morocco to investigate after 4 separate sightings of the girl. Kennedy in turn hired Spanish agency Metoda, sending 35 investigators across Europe and Morocco to look into the case. However, this all went nowhere when the head of the agency made false public statements to CBS such as, "We know the kidnapper, we know who he is and how he has done it." Though one South African property developer, Stephen Birch, claimed that some scans showed some bones beneath the driveway of a house in Praia da Luz, but this was never followed up on further. It was reported that everyone wanted to help, but also some people just wanted to be seen to help, which created a sense of chaos and a sense of competition, complicating the entire investigation. Some allegations involved the McCanns on the Tapas 7 all being swingers who had sedated their children that night and then formed a pact of silence, considering none of the others have ever spoken publicly. Although there were inconsistencies in both Jerry and Kate's statements, this may have been caused by a language barrier. Investigators would question the couple in Portuguese, which was then translated by an interpreter into English, which was then translated back and typed up in Portuguese and then verbally translated back to English for them to sign. Allegedly, Jerry initially claimed to have entered the apartment through the locked front door, but later claimed to have entered through the patio. There were also supposedly inconsistencies regarding whether the front door was locked or not. However, Jerry claims that the front door was used earlier in the week, but since it was next to the kids' room, they began using the patio doors instead. Kate was criticised for discovering that her child was missing before she then immediately left her twins alone again, instead of calling the others with her phone or shouting from the balcony. Many also dispute the need for her to suddenly shout "they've taken her" as a suspicious way to supposedly fake an abduction story.
Kate, why did you think immediately that she was abducted and hadn't wandered out of the apartment or gone somewhere? Why was that such a gut reaction for you, do you think?
Well, there's absolutely no way a 3-year-old could open those shutters and the
Simple
window.
as that.
Simple as that.
Yeah.
You know, and people, you know, obviously people saying, sure she didn't wander off. I'm saying, well, the shutter was up and the window was open. I'm not lying about that. And even if they want to say theoretically, oh, she wandered out the back of the apartment, then you're basically saying a 3-year-old has opened the long curtains, closed them behind her, opened the patio doors, closed them behind her, opened the gate at the top of the stairs, closed that behind her.
With the child lock.
And done the same at the bottom. You know, it's just not, it's not possible.
It was also called into question whether or not the shutter over the window could actually be opened from the outside. According to journalist Danny Collins, the shutter was made up of non-ferrous metal slats on a roller blind, which was housed in a box at the top of the window, which was controlled by pulling on a strap. Once it's rolled down, the slats lock into place outside and can only be raised by using the strap inside. Kate claims that the window and shutter were closed when she put the children to bed, but open when they made the discovery. According to Jerry, once he realised that Madeleine was missing, he lowered the shutter and then went outside to realise it could only be raised from outside. However, the Portuguese police denied this and claimed that the only way it could be opened from the outside is with brute strength, which would have caused a lot of noise, but the apartment showed no sign of forced entry.
I got to the apartment in seconds running and I found it as Kate described it, and I did the same things, checked everything, and then I went over to the window and I lowered the shutter and I went out through the front door and I found I could lift the shutter up from the outside, and I just knew as well that someone had taken her. There was no way she could have got out of that apartment alone.
It was on June the 28th when the McCanns suggested the authorities contact South African private detective Danny Krugel, who had developed a matter orientation system. This was a handheld device that he claimed he could use to locate missing people using DNA and satellites, but this was disbelieved by most, with one scientist claiming that it caused his BS detector to go off the scale. Kate would later admit that his claims made no sense, but that they were desperate to listen to any potential lead, even considering psychics.
You don't realise how strong you are until you have no option, and I think that's very true. Obviously, massive events like this cause a lot of reaction, a lot of trauma and upset, but ultimately you have to keep going, and especially when you've got other children involved.
I think before Madeleine was taken, we felt we'd managed to achieve a little perfect nuclear family of 5. And we had that for a short period, and I suppose it's just almost the same way as if your child becomes ill or seriously ill or has died, and like many other families have suffered, then your vision is altered and you have to adapt, and you adapt and you have a new normality, and unfortunately for us, our new normality at the minute is a family of 4.
The McCanns sent him Madeleine's hair and eyelashes collected from their home, and once Krugel visited Praia da Luz, he claimed that his equipment picked up a static signal in an area of the beach near the Rocha Negra cliff. However, the aforementioned Amaral investigating the case was convinced that Kate only pretended to support him as a ploy. He believed that they were involved in her disappearance in some capacity, and were using Krugel to disclose the location of her body without compromising themselves. It was on September the 9th, just days after the McCanns were named as suspects. They were finally allowed to leave Portugal and return back to England. But things were about to get even worse. While the Jane Tanner sighting was discarded quite early on, the sighting of Martin and Mary Smith was really focused on as the most conclusive. The couple put together an e-fin, but things got worse when Martin saw some BBC coverage of the case and saw a clip of Jerry exiting a plane carrying his son. And Martin was convinced that this was the man he had seen carrying the child in Praia da Luz. However, he did later retract this claim, believing that he was mistaken. Made worse when several witnesses put Jerry at the Tapas restaurant at the time of the disappearance and sighting, though many do admit that the e-fit bears a striking resemblance to Jerry McCann. However, strangely, former British police officer Henry Exton submitted a report to the Madeleine McCann Fund wanting to release the e-fits, but the fund refused, insisting that they remain confidential. However, this may be due to the report itself suggesting that Madeleine died in the apartment. What others found extra suspicious was that they released the e-fits to the police, but they weren't released publicly for years, and Kate never included them in a book when showing other potential suspects. They were released publicly in October 2013 by Scotland Yard, who claimed that the McCanns had them in their possession since 2008, leading to the couple complaining as they never failed to publish them or withheld them from the police, leading to newspaper apologies and receiving £55,000 in damages, which Jerry claimed was all donated to charity.
We're fortunate we survived, and I do mean that, we survived. We are lucky we survived. We had tremendous support, but I can promise you there were times where I felt like I was drowning.
Over the years, the PJ and the British police had to translate tens of thousands of documents, releasing age-progressed images, taking 1,338 statements, collecting over 1,000 exhibits, investigating 650 sex offenders, 60 persons of interest, and looking into over 8,000 sightings, but have found no conclusive evidence to incriminate any of the aforementioned suspects. So while these people continue to walk free, while this investigation continues to linger, the world can only pose all of these important questions and continue seeking answers.